Hey everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Mark Buzz,
And I'm out of bugs.
and we're here to, take a deep dive into some really fascinating topics.
That's right.
And today we're going to be talking about
Hmm.
something that I think a lot of people try not to think about,
Yeah.
but it's really important to think about, and that is how rats are getting into our homes.
It is definitely not a fun topic, but it is important to understand.
It is. So the source that we are looking at today is an article from Simple Pest Management called How Rats Are Getting in Your House and What You Can Do About It. Um, and I have to say, when I first started looking into this, I was really surprised by some of the stuff I was reading.
Like what?
Like, did you know that rats can squeeze through a hole the size of a quarter?
Oh, yeah, they can get through some really tiny spaces.
It's kind of unbelievable.
It's amazing and a little terrifying all at the same time.
So I'm guessing all those little gaps and cracks around my house are basically open invitations for rats.
Well, yeah, I mean, the article talks about 5 main entry points, and a lot of them you might not even think about.
Like what?
So we've got cracks and holes in your foundation. You've got openings around doors and windows. You've got roof access. You've got crawl spaces and basements. And then you've got utility openings.
Okay, so the first few make sense, but roof access, how are they getting up there?
Well, especially roof rats. Those guys are amazing climbers. I mean, think about it. They live in trees. They can scurry up a downspout using their tiny claws. Then they can squeeze through a loose vent cover on your roof. And they can even jump from tree branches onto your roof.
Okay, that is really tricky. I am definitely going to check my vent covers when we're done here.
Good idea.
But even if they do manage to get inside, wouldn't we notice them right away?
Not necessarily. I mean, that's why it's so important to know what signs to look for.
Okay, so let's play detective. What are some of the clues that we should be looking for?
Well, droppings are a big one. They're small, dark pellet-shaped, and you'll usually find them near food sources or along their travel paths.
What about those gnaw marks I keep hearing about?
Oh, yeah, they have to knock constantly to keep their teeth trimmed. So you might see chew marks on wood plastic, even wiring.
So we're talking droppings, gnaw marks, anything else?
You might hear them at night. They're most active then. So listen for scratching in your walls, ceilings, under the floorboards.
Yeah, that's always a little creepy.
Also, keep an eye out for greasy smudges along the walls. That's from the oils and dirt on their fur as they're squeezing through those tight spaces.
Okay, so we've got our detective kit ready to go. But why is it so important to catch these signs early?
Because even a small rat problem can turn into a big one really fast.
Meaning?
Well, they reproduce quickly. And once they've settled in, they can cause a lot of damage and they can spread diseases.
So we're talking more than just a few chew-up wires.
Oh, yeah, much more. They can contaminate your food damage, the structure of your home, and their droppings, urine, and saliva can spread some pretty nasty diseases.
Yikes. Okay, so prevention is key. I'm guessing that starts with sealing up all those entry points we talked about.
Absolutely. But you can't just plug a few holes. You have to think like a rat.
Okay, how does a rat think?
If you were a rat, how would you get in?
I guess I'd be looking for any possible opening, no matter how small.
Exactly. And you got to use materials that they can't chew through, like steel wool or caulk.
Right, because those little foam strips I've been using around my windows are probably useless.
Pretty much. You want sturdy weather stripping for doors and windows, and for larger openings, use heavy-duty hardware cloth.
Okay, so we've sealed up the fortress. What about making the inside of our homes less appealing? I know the article mentions getting rid of food and water sources, but how do you actually do that effectively?
Well, it's all about minimizing those attractants. Store all your food, including pet food, in airtight containers. Clean up spills and crumbs immediately, and don't leave dirty dishes out.
So basically, less all-night buffet and more clean kitchen, happy life.
Exactly. And don't forget about water sources, dripping faucets, pet water bowls left out overnight. All those things can attract rats.
Got it. Fix leaks, put away the pet bowls, anything else.
What about the outside of your house? You don't want to give them easy access.
You're going to say something about my overgrown bushes, aren't you?
Well, yeah, trim back any trees or bushes that are touching your house and clear out any dense vegetation. You basically want to make their travel routes more exposed so they feel less comfortable coming near your home.
And I'm sure you're going to say something about trash management, too.
Of course, overflowing garbage cans are a feast for rats. Use cans with tight-fitting lids, take your garbage out regularly, and store those bins away from your house.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here on prevention. But what happens if, despite our best efforts, we still end up with a rat problem?
Well, that's when we move from prevention to removal.
Okay, bring on the addition strategies. What are our options?
Well, the article mentions 3 main methods: traps, bait stations, and professional pest control.
Okay, so let's start with traps. Those seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the classic snap trap is still very effective, especially if you bait it with something delicious like peanut butter, place them along walls, or in areas where you've seen signs of rat activity.
But those can be kind of messy and dangerous if you have kids or pets around.
That's true. You have to be very careful about placement, and that's where bait stations can be a good alternative.
So those are the ones that are enclosed, right? So there's less risk of accidental exposure.
Exactly. And a lot of them use poisons that are designed for delayed lethality, which is a pretty clever strategy.
Delayed lethality, that sounds a little ominous. Why is that a good thing?
It prevents bait shyness. If a rat eats bait and dies immediately right there by the station, the other rats will see that and avoid the bait. But if there's a delay, the rat will likely consume the bait, go back to its nest, and then die later.
Wow, that's pretty sneaky. So the other rats don't connect the bait with the danger.
Exactly. They're smart, those rats.
So when is it time to call in the professionals?
If you've tried prevention and you've tried the DIY methods and you're still seeing signs of rats, then it's probably time to call a professional pest control service.
What would you say are the biggest advantages of going that route?
Well, they have the experience and the tools to not only get rid of the existing infestation, but to identify and seal up any entry points that you might have missed. And they can offer guarantees and warranties, which can give you some peace of mind.
Peace of mind is definitely worth something, especially when you're dealing with rats.
Absolutely.
And speaking of experts, our source for all this rat wisdom comes from Simple Pest Management.
Right. They're committed to providing effective and customer-focused pest control.
Which is exactly what you want when you're dealing with these unwelcome house guests.
For sure.
And speaking of unwelcome, we are just getting started here on the deep dive, so stick with us as we uncover more fascinating insights into the world of rats.
And hey, if you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to like and follow us for more episodes like this. And if you're looking for more expert advice on keeping your home pest-free, be sure to follow Simple Pest Management on social media. And welcome back to the deep dive.
So, we've been talking about rats and how they get into our homes, and I have to say I'm actually finding this kind of fascinating.
I know, me too. It's like you don't really think about how these creatures are living all around us, but they've gotten really good at adapting to our world.
Yeah, and I guess that's why it's so important to understand how to prevent them and how to get rid of them if they do manage to get in.
Exactly.
So we were talking about those removal methods. We talked about traps and bait stations, but I'm wondering, what are the pros and cons of each one? Is one better than the other?
Well, it really depends on, your specific situation and your comfort level. I mean, the snap traps are really effective and they're pretty cheap, but yeah, they can be kind of messy.
And maybe not so great if you have kids or pets around.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be really careful about where you put them, and some people just don't like the idea of them, you know?
I get that. So bait stations, those are the ones that are enclosed, right? So it's a little safer.
Right. They're tamper resistant, so kids and pets can't get into them. And they often use those delayed lethality poisons, which is actually a pretty smart strategy.
Yeah, we were talking about that before. The bait shyness thing is pretty amazing. But are there any downsides to bait stations?
Um, well, sometimes it can be tricky to find the right place to put them. You want them to be accessible to the rats, but not to kids or pets.
And you have to dispose of them properly too, right?
Right, exactly.
Safety first. So we've talked about those DIY options, but when does it make sense to call in the professionals?
If you've tried everything else and you're still seeing rats, then it's definitely time to call in a pro.
What would you say are the biggest advantages of doing that?
Well, they just have a lot more experience. They have the tools and the knowledge to really get rid of the rats and to prevent them from coming back. They can also find those entry points that you might have missed.
Right. And they can probably offer some kind of guarantee too,
Yeah, exactly. So you can have some peace of mind.
which is definitely worth something when you're dealing with a rat problem.
Oh, yeah.
So far, we've been focusing on how to keep rats out of our homes, but why are they so attracted to our living spaces in the first place?
Well, it's because our homes provide everything they need. They can find food and water and shelter, and we create these warm, cozy environments that are perfect for them to build nests and raise their young.
So we're basically creating a rat paradise without even realizing it.
Kind of, yeah.
So it sounds like we need to do more than just sealing up holes. We need to make our homes less appealing in general.
Right. It's all about good sanitation and hygiene, keeping things clean and clutter-free, storing food properly, taking out the trash regularly. All those things make a big difference.
It's funny how those basic chores are actually really important for pest control.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not just about rats either. Those good habits will help you prevent all kinds of pest problems.
So it's a win-win. We get a cleaner home and we don't have to worry about unwanted critters.
Exactly.
So we've talked about entry point signs of infestation prevention removal methods, and now we've even talked about the psychology of why rats are attracted to our homes. Is there anything else we need to know?
Well, so far we've really just been focused on, the practical aspects of rat infestations, but there's another side to these creatures that I think is worth talking about.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Are you saying there's more to rats than just the Q gross factor?
Yeah, I mean, we see them as pests, but they're actually really complex creatures, and they have this long and fascinating history with humans.
Okay, now you've really got my attention.
So stay tuned because in our final segment, we're going to explore that side of the story.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our rat deep dive.
And we've talked about a lot of, how they get in, how to keep them out, how to get rid of them if they do get in.
Yeah, we even talked about how we might be accidentally inviting them in with, our messy habits.
Exactly. But like I said before, there's more to these creatures than meets the eye.
Okay, so you've been teasing this other side of the story. What is it?
Well, we tend to think of rats as, just pests, but they're really complex creatures, and they've had this really long relationship with humans.
Now that you mention it, I do remember reading something about rats being used in scientific research.
Right. They're actually used in labs all the time because, believe it or not, they share a lot of genetic and physiological similarities with humans.
Really? So these creatures that we try to avoid at all costs are actually helping us advance medicine.
It might sound weird, but yeah, it's true. They've been super important in research for all kinds of diseases: cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, you name it.
Wow, that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It just goes to show that, there's always more to the story.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway from this whole deep dive. Rats might be really good at getting into our homes, but they've also played a really important role in scientific progress.
Exactly. And I think it just highlights how important it is to try to understand and respect all creatures, even the ones that we might not like.
I think that's a perfect point to end on. We've learned a lot about rats today, and I hope you all learned something new too.
And if you do have a rat problem, remember all the tips we talked about for prevention and removal. And if you need expert help, be sure to check out Simple Pest Management.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and follow us for more.
Thanks for listening.